Go ahead and call us to order. Just formally, and then I'll introduce our consultants.
Okay. Welcome to the Lynchburg Together Planning Commission work session of September 4th, and I call the meeting to order. Is that all I need to say? Or I did not print out the...
No, that's fine.
Okay.
That's perfect.
All right, thanks.
Members of the Planning Commission, thanks for being here today. You'll recall this is the second of 4 work sessions that we plan to have with you for our comprehensive plan update. And we have with us 2 members of the Berkeley Group team. We have Catherine Redfern and Benjamin Tripp, and they are going to talk about the draft chapters for housing and economic development today. So with that, I'll let them get started.
Great. Thank you, Rachel. And thank you all for your time this afternoon. It's been a while since we met. It was back in May. We came together and we looked at some of the results of public engagement as well as the community profile, the existing conditions analysis, and worked through some key themes that we have been using to draft the chapters of the comprehensive plan. The purpose of this afternoon's meeting is to review the first of the 2 policy chapters that we have drafted for the comprehensive plan. We'll review the housing and economy chapters and also give a brief schedule and progress update since we've had some shifts to the schedule since we last met. We also, you'll recall when we met in May, we discussed the possibility of identifying catalyst projects, those projects that could really catalyze movement and change within the city, and that was something we agreed would be a good exercise for us to go through as we're reviewing these draft chapters. So we will talk through some of that for housing and economy as well. Any general questions before we jump in? No. Okay. So just briefly, where are we in the update process? You all have seen this graphic before. We are in phase 2 of the plan drafting phase. This is the second of actually 5 total work sessions we will have with you all. At the end of this process, we will compile the whole plan. So we're looking at during these work sessions, we'll be looking at individual chapters and then compiling the whole document at the end, presenting that for public review before the plan goes into the refinement and adoption phase of the project. This is just a reminder of the structure of the plan that we talked about and agreed upon at our last meeting. There will be 6 chapters. Chapter 1 about the plan we reviewed in May. Chapter 2 has not been drafted yet, though we discussed key themes and vision at the last meeting. And we will be discussing today sections of Chapter 3 and Chapter 5, housing and neighborhoods and economic development and investment. And then there will also be appendices that include the community engagement summary, which we looked at last meeting, the community profile, and a glossary, which we are building as we go about drafting the plan. All right, that is it. We'll jump into the policy discussion. Benjamin's going to facilitate this portion of the meeting, and you'll see from the agenda that you all received, the real goal here is to focus on the policy items of each of the 2 chapters that we have submitted for your review today. So the goal statement, the objective statements, and in particular, the strategy statements. If you all have typographical or editorial changes, those can be submitted and we'll in writing, and we'll make those as necessary. All right, Benjamin, take it away.
Okay. I'm going to stand up if that's all right. Can you guys hear me okay? Super. Because I'm probably going to gesture to things that are on the screen here.
Scoot this a little bit.
Yep. I'm going to move it a little closer there. Sure. If you want to go ahead to the next slide. So it's just to talk about the process again, as Catherine said, really what we're looking for from you guys is consensus on the goal statement, which you can see here in blue, the objectives, and then the strategies when we get to them. We can, if we end up changing anything or we want to reword something, we can kind of work chapter text back like that if you don't really like a strategy or something along those lines. But again, just sort of general, like, is this what you want? Anything specific we can take care of in the comment tracker. So the goal statement for this chapter is here in blue. Support a variety of high quality, safe, and attainable housing options as a means of encouraging economic growth and enhancing neighborhood livability. How does that sound to you all?
Sounds good.
See some heads nodding? Yes, sir.
Attainable is kind of the key word for me there. What, can you explain what you're thinking? And is that going to, is that in the plan imagined to be in specific areas, or is it imagined to be citywide? What do you mean by attainable?
I think the intent of the word attainable here is that it is attainable to a person. So that factors into things like cost, its affordability, that you have the right mix of housing types. So if someone's looking for a single-family house, they're able to find that housing product. If they're looking for an apartment, that's available as well. So it's not geared to any specific area, really. It just means that housing can be attained, the desired types of housing, really. Does that answer your question?
I think what you're going to find, if you didn't remember me from last time, I'm probably going to be one of the gaffes in the group. And maybe, hopefully you won't consider it too bothersome or annoying, but I guess that's part of the reason why we're here. So.
That's exactly right. No, I appreciate the comment. It's a good question. Thank you. Anyone else? Sound okay? All right, super. So there are 3 objectives in this chapter. Objective 1 is facilitate the development of high-quality housing options that are attainable to the full spectrum of Lynchburg's workforce. So that goes back to that affordability like we talked about, that there's kind of something for everyone. Objective 2, proactively address vacant and deteriorating properties through implementing rigorous code enforcement procedures. Objective 3, enhance quality of life through ensuring that all of Lynchburg's neighborhoods are livable. And then the strategies that we have fall under those various objectives and support them. Sound okay? Any questions? Yes, sir.
I'm just trying to backdoor the objective 2 to the goal statement. I can deduce, I'm just taking a moment.
Sure. It probably relates mostly to high quality and safe.
Okay.
Yeah. As well as livability. It needs to be in good condition.
Yeah.
I think some questions will come later as we move into the details. At least I know.
Yeah,
for me
probably.
they will be.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get my brain structured in a way that's helpful, so, okay.
Let's go ahead to the strategies. If you could pull that up, Catherine, I think that might help you kind of understand what we're going for there. And if we need to tweak that, we can. Yeah. Make it a little bit bigger, maybe. Okay. Can everybody read that? You may have it on your own. Dave, are you able to?
This is the chapter draft. You all should have this in electronic format as well.
Right. And I'll just walk us through these, if that makes sense, and we can talk about any of them. I'll go through each objective and read them all in that, and then we can stop and talk about the ones in that objective before we move on to the next. If that makes sense. So the first objective, which we talked about, facilitate the development of high-quality housing options that are attainable to the full spectrum of Lynchburg's workforce. You could scroll up just a little bit. The first one, amend the zoning ordinance to ensure all residential dwelling types are permitted appropriately. That is, they're allowed in the correct places. That's really something that you guys determine. Work with local and regional service providers and partners to provide education about local, state, and federal homeownership programs available to city residents. Support the ongoing efforts of the Lynchburg Housing Collaborative. Engage anchor health and educational institutions to join in the collaborative. Work with the Central Virginia Planning District Commission and its member jurisdictions to develop a regional housing education campaign. Develop a functional housing trust fund within 5 years of the adoption of the plan, using similar communities in Virginia and the Southeast U.S. as models, whichever ones you determine to be appropriate. Support community land trusts partnerships with regional and private partners to facilitate the development of workforce housing options. Support the Central Virginia Continuum of Care's implementation strategies, including housing-based solutions to eliminate homelessness in the region, and encourage the use of low-income housing tax credits to develop a variety of attainable and attractive housing options. So those are the strategies we have to support that particular objective up here above. Are there any questions about those, or any you'd like to discuss further? Maybe slide it down a little bit so they can see the rest of them.
Can you
Yes, ma'am.
explain what the housing trust fund is? For
The functional housing trust fund. A functional housing.
developer
I'm
function?
sorry, thank you. Develop a functional housing trust fund within 5 years of the plan and use similar communities in Virginia and the Southeast U.S. as models. So, there's the housing trust funds and land trusts and things like that are all sort of geared towards affordability. I mean, they're different ways of allowing, really of encouraging the supply of housing at an affordable rate for workers. I mean, does that sort of make sense?
I mean, is it grants to home buyers, or what? I don't understand what the
Yeah.
functional housing trust fund is. It's a lump of money, I take it.
Sure,
A bucket
yeah.
of money that the city would have
Mhm.
from somewhere, and who gets it?
Yeah.
That's what I want.
Yeah. Well, and the details of all these programs are things that you all and the staff and everybody would need to work out. Did you want to jump in?
So the Housing Trust Fund, that particular recommendation also is something that the Housing Collaborative, which is a sort of a regional ongoing conversation group about housing in our the city and the surrounding counties. The trust fund is something they are particularly interested in to, I believe they say, to produce and preserve affordable housing and then remove barriers for redevelopment, with the goal of blight removal, rehabilitation, helping with pre-development costs, that sort of thing, kind of to facilitate, I think, and bring down the cost of housing so that it is more attainable.
And there are a lot of ways sometimes that happens. I mean, sometimes it can be like a revolving loan fund. Sometimes they can own property outright, or own the land and then kind of do a land lease, things like that. There's a lot of different models to it.
So further down the plan, do you have some communities that we could benchmark against that are doing this already? Because you point
Yeah.
out geographic, Southwest
Mhm.
Virginia. For example, does Roanoke do this?
Let's see. I'm not sure if they do it or not, to tell you the truth. We can find that out for you. I mean, we could provide you with a list of different ones that do it. I know Roanoke has some housing authority type options. I'm not sure if they have a trust fund off the top of my head.
Couple of
Yes, sir.
corollary questions. One, do we know how much of the low-income housing burden Lynchburg carries as a percentage of the surrounding region versus the counties? And two, with this as a bullet point, city initiatives to encourage the use of low-income housing tax credits, is there any concern that's going to result in attracting even more low-income housing residents to the city, which, I mean, is that part of where we want to go as a city?
I think that's more of a policy question for you all, really. I think, yeah, well, no, it's a good question. I mean, it's something that you as a community have to decide what level of things like that you want to do.
Which is a comprehensive plan, right? I mean, that's the reason we're here.
Yeah, some of it is in this, but a lot of it is kind of how it works out, in the soup afterwards when you end up adopting these policies or creating them. So this is sort of a broad-based thing, right? And many of these policies you'll end up taking, and staff will work on it to develop it and kind of flesh it out if it's something that you decide you want to do.
It appears problematic first to include that in our list of objectives, just as a side note.
Sure.
So,
Although I would say that it actually might fit better in the second one because this is how a lot of lower income homes that are owned that might need rehabilitation or
Mhm.
somebody wants to rehabilitate something, maybe that's one of the ways they do it. So,
Yeah. Yeah, would you feel like it would be better in the other objective? Was that what you were saying?
It might work, it might fit better in that,
I think it might too.
Yeah.
to, as a way to actually help, I mean, we've done this as a community, I think, tried to help get homeowners into vacant properties.
Yeah.
So that might be, useful there.
agree.
This looks
Yeah.
like a shared objective.
Let's pull it over there, if that works for you guys.
That one's about vacant and deteriorating properties, right?
It is, mostly.
And low-income housing tax credits aren't necessarily about vacant and deteriorating properties.
It's about making them livable.
Yeah, they often are about using something that is either vacant or deteriorated or in poor condition and being able to rehab it with a certain,
It
yeah,
incentivizes it.
exactly.
That's what we-
But we can look at that. We'd also look at kind of splitting that up a little bit if you want. Anything you'd like to add?
No, I was just going to clarify, were you suggesting the LIHTC move or the trust fund recommendation move?
Well, I was just addressing Chuck's question about why we have this in there.
Okay.
And, we do have a broad
Yeah.
crop of homeowners. We do have people who can't afford, might be in a home they can't, there's people who live in historic districts who can't afford to get their house back up to shape, So I was just thinking that this is one of the tools maybe that we, as a community can use to help with that.
And if we're incorporating existing federal and state programs, provide through Section 8 housing, that winds up often being unfair to the residents who worked there, or went to school, or did whatever to get in those houses, and they're being housed with folks who aren't used to living in places like this and otherwise getting their housing for free or for lower than they would otherwise have to pay. And if we're attracting and working to attract those kind of residents, we're going to pull them from the counties, because if they can't get that stuff in the county, absolutely going to come to the city.
Yeah. And I think there's one thing that would help with that, and it's an excellent point, is this part about a regional housing, the regional housing education campaign, and trying to look at housing on a regional level with the counties. Because you're right, it's a regional issue, right? It's not unique to the city. So, yeah. Any others? Yes, ma'am.
Well, I would just say, I would hate to eliminate, the possibility of using tax credit just because we didn't want to attract more low-income people. But if it is a really great program that provides funding that can help, we already have a lot of low-income people that don't have, housing that is
Well, I would suggest
affordable
the
and-
large bulk of undeveloped property, and where none of this is going on, almost the entire area is zoned Ward R1, is in the Boonesboro area. The Cheese Creek, Irvington Park area is almost completely undeveloped. We could rezone that, put a whole bunch of low-income housing up there, but I can guarantee that's probably not going to be very popular, including, some people on this committee. So it's easy to talk about incentivizing low-income housing in the city when it's happening in other people's neighborhoods. When it's happening in your neighborhood, it takes on a new meaning.
But we're not talking about putting low-income housing in Bensboro, we're talking about tax credits.
Incentivizing. Let's read it. Encourage the use of low-income housing tax credits. So what are those used for?
For people to have the tax credits if they go and rehabilitate a house.
Okay, and what are Section 8 housing? What is that used for? Yeah.
So.
You don't see that in the northern part of the city.
I don't think that this is, cities provide services that people move in
Yes.
to the cities for, no matter what.
Right.
We're talking about people who want to own homes, and I think that's,
Right.
a good
That's
thing.
it.
So I don't want us to get sidetracked on talking about something that might not be related to
No, we're an advisory.
kind of building housing stock.
And you're right, we're an advisory body, and this is the comprehensive plan discussion. And we advise city council, whatever comes to their desk, they assume that we vetted this. They assume that we've asked the hard questions. They've assumed that we've challenged the policy and we're not just rubber stamping something that's come through because the experts have given us, an answer on something. And if we're not doing that, there's no point for us to be here. We need to think about what kind of city we want to be in 10 or 20 years. And if we're going to keep doing the same things that we've done for the last century, which is, and I've got a map right in front of me here that shows what we've been doing for the last century, if we're not going to do any changes, we might as well dump all of our money and time into marketing what we're already going to do if we're going to do the same things, because there's no point in any of us being here.
So what I'm hearing is that there is consensus to leave the strategy as it is currently worded, but that we feel it would be more appropriate under the other objective. Is that correct?
Can you define what a low-income housing tax credit is? Is it for a family or a person who needs the money to pay their rent, or is it for a developer to build a house, put that person?
It's more the latter. It's used to increase supply of low-income housing. So it's commonly done when you have, like we talked about, a derelict property or something else, but it doesn't have to be. And you create a certain number of units out of that which are more affordable. That's the gist of it.
Historical tax credit.
Yeah.
It incentivizes people to rehabilitate a historic home. They get a historic tax credit.
they're used together, the historic
Right.
rehabilitation tax credit, is to create a variety of housing out of a rehabilitated building.
One thing, Chuck, that might address your concerns is, instead of using the term encourage, maybe use the term support, where it takes it down a notch just a little bit.
I think that probably is what's stating me, is the word.
We're certainly open to it.
Encourage and incentivize as opposed to we are open to.
We are open,
Okay.
we support the use of this, and we
All
do.
right.
We get these petitions in front of, at least once a year, we get a petition related to this topic. And we consider it and we support them when appropriate.
I think it's-
So we would reword this to support the use of low-income housing tax credits to develop a variety of attainable and attractive housing options. A little more
Or
palatable.
maintain an openness to, yeah, something
Yeah.
toned way down, encourage and incentivize, yes.
All right. Okay, any other questions about strategies? Any other discussion for ones under this objective before we move on? No? Okay. Our second objective, proactively address vacant and deteriorating properties through implementing rigorous code enforcement procedures. The first one, adopt a drug blight ordinance in accordance with the Code of Virginia to address blight associated with illegal drug use or other confirmed criminal activity. 2, avoid demolition of properties in designated historic districts, pursuing rehabilitation, adaptive reuse, or creative reuse instead. Review the zoning ordinance to identify barriers to rehabilitation and reuse and amend any if you find them. Amend the Code of Ordinances to designate 2 housing rehabilitation zones in neighborhoods of greatest need in accordance with the Code of Virginia. Expand the city's rehabilitation renovation program to apply to all designated historic districts. Continue implementation of Lynchburg's property toolkit, including updates to city council. We've talked with staff a little bit. We may reword that. Quarterly might be a little too frequent, really might be better as annual or something like that. Work with the EDA to dispose of city-owned vacant or underutilized properties with the goal of repurposing them for infill or adaptive reuse where appropriate. Develop a blight abatement plan to specifically identify solutions for deteriorating properties in designated historic districts, and work with local nonprofit and voluntary organizations to provide assistance with property maintenance violations for individuals who are elderly or may not be able to afford to maintain their property. Just like before, I'll give you guys a moment to chew on that.
Can you expand on the third point, amend the Code of Ordinances to designate 2 housing rehabilitation zones in neighborhoods of greatest need?
Sure. So you, in order to do that through the Code of Virginia, you would need to designate those areas. And you could pick wherever they are, and then it brings in some other tools in the code. It kind of enables you to do other things. It's similar to the drug and blight ordinance in some ways, you know, that when it just gives you more ability to work with those properties to address things like that.
So at the delegate, the legislative level, at the state House of Delegates, for example, you would carry legislation that would modify the code, include
You
those?
would designate it on the ground here.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's something that the state has.
Said that localities are allowed to do if they so choose to adopt a policy or
Right.
establish those zones.
And that activates funds or something?
Is it incentives?
It activates abilities to do things. So if you have a rehabilitation zone, then you are able to bring into play other types of blight abatements or open it up to other programs, you know.
It sounds like a good idea.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
hadn't
it
heard of
is.
this.
It is, and they're commonly used. And it'll allow you to say, you know, this is an area that we have a problem that we want to focus on. You know, and that's really the key to it.
And what, each city is only allowed 2? Or
I think you can designate more, but the 2 seem like a good manageable first number. It could be 1. I mean,
Or we could drop the number
Yeah.
and say we'll
Right.
just bite off what we think we can chew
Designate
and.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
From an address perspective, proactively address, are there other incentives that you might call out here that would be worthy of note, that are maybe hidden within the language? To incentivize people to address vacant and deteriorating properties as opposed to penalizing?
Oh, you mean use more of the carrot than the stick?
Well, I'm just curious if that is in here. It's more of a
Yeah.
question from ignorance.
Yeah, well, some of these enable things like tax breaks if you wanted to do them.
Yeah.
You know, let's see. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, go ahead, Rachel.
I was just going to add, just sitting here, I
Did you pull up the code?
No, I was going to say, I personally kind of flagged the word enforcement because within our community development department, we have a division called code compliance, and it used to be called code enforcement, and it was, I don't want to say rebranded, but, you know, the goal really was compliance and not penalties. It wasn't about taking people to court because no one wants to take somebody to court. The goal was to get the property back into a reasonable condition where it's not causing, a hazard to people around it or, a liability for the neighbors, that sort of thing. So compliance is the goal, and I think that would be a better term for it, because that really is what that division works toward.
Yeah.
So you're talking about in the objective, Rachel?
Yeah, code compliance.
Yeah.
Changing
Good,
enforcement to
Richard.
compliance.
Yes.
Right, yeah, we can do that. Yeah, that's a good suggestion.
Because I think that's really what most of these aim for anyway.
And if you scroll on down here, I can get it if you need it, but if you scroll on down kind of to the bottom, it talks about some of those more neighborhood services model things, like the work with local nonprofits and organizations to help people, basically, right? So, a lot of the time you think of the person who's gotten older and can't maintain their property or doesn't have the money to get it painted or things like that. You can leverage those community resources and volunteers to do those kinds of things.
And I know property is used to describe a number of different types of property, but it does seem like I get to hear more often than not about the blight or the areas that need rehabilitation in the business and
Yeah.
retail sector, especially in downtown on our main streets.
Yeah, it's very visible.
Yeah, it's extremely visible, and boy, do people like to talk about it. So I just didn't know, and this is more of a statement, not a question, if there's an opportunity for prioritization. Maybe it goes back to the designate 2 housing rehabilitation zones, but, yeah.
Call attention to commercial.
Well, yeah, because it feels to me, and I'm coming from a very biased position, that you get your most visible in foot trafficked areas that you kind of want to plant a proud flag on, and then hopefully you see a continued growth from that progress.
Yeah, it's a great point. I think the chapter itself, being housing and neighborhoods, is geared a little more towards the residential
Okay.
areas. But, a neighborhood can still be a commercial area in some ways. The economy chapter, for example, talks a lot about, the downtown planning efforts and the streetscapes and those kinds of things. And there, you do address it through that. But, if you would like us to look at adding something as a strategy to that effect, we could.
I'm not necessarily suggesting add it, because I know you've done a lot of work, but
Yeah.
I'm just saying that from a retail ownership perspective, there are plenty of people that live in this community
Yeah.
that own these properties that don't do anything with them, and I don't know if it sits here or another strategy or whatever you're calling these things, but it's just a thought.
It's a good point.
Yeah, we'll make sure that's covered somewhere, because when we talk about property maintenance, I feel, personally, my default, I think of residential, that's just kind of where my mind goes, but
Right.
we definitely have commercial areas that
Yeah.
suffer from those same issues.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, and I've made a note here to look into that. I think there's also, particularly when you're talking about downtown and some other areas of the city, there are mixed-use areas where it's not just residential and it's not just commercial. So I think we can go through and I think look a little bit more closely at how
Okay.
we're addressing mixed use and rehabilitation of mixed use
Yeah,
areas.
yeah, that's great to hear.
Yeah, and your historic district stuff helps you a lot too
Yeah.
in areas like that. Yeah, no, thank you for bringing up, great point. Any other questions about this objective? Any other comments? All right. We will go on to objective 3, which is enhance quality of life through ensuring all of Lynchburg's neighborhoods are livable. So the first one, publicize information about weatherization, energy efficiency retrofits, accessibility modifications, well septic upgrades, things like that, programs through a targeted advertising campaign. Evaluate and implement methods to rehabilitate or replace mobile homes constructed before 1978, including grant and homeowner assistance programs. Engage neighborhood residents early and often in any small area or neighborhood level planning interventions. Thank you. Direct development of transitional housing, age-restricted communities, and multifamily housing within a half mile of transportation, retail, and healthcare services, as to with walkability and access to it. Amend the zoning ordinance to facilitate additional traditional neighborhood development and planned unit developments. Support creative placemaking efforts as a means of addressing deteriorated properties and building communities. Review and amend development regulations, particularly buffering and setbacks as needed, to ensure a balance between facilitating redevelopment and compatible land uses. And then use CDBG, Community Development Block Grant funding for the highest priority goals as identified in the consolidated plan.
So I think,
Yes, sir.
like, points 3 and 4 might be a little bit of what, kind of touching on what Dave is saying, where, a lot of our areas that are really walkable
Yes.
and have services, but they are in older commercial areas, and I think that would be, hopefully we address that further down, the opportunity that we have with some buildings that might be blighted, that could actually have more, mixed use. And so I said items 3 and 4, because 4 talks about zoning a little bit. Not really, planned or traditional, but some other options that might fit in between that and regular residential.
Yeah, definitely. And wisely so, right?
And what?
I said and wisely so.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
So.
Yes, sir.
City staff spends a lot of time developing high-quality neighborhood plans. We heard one last week, and I was surprised we didn't hear that at all anywhere in this chapter. It seems like this objective would be a good place to mention continue developing and implementing neighborhood plans or something along
We can
that.
certainly add that,
Yeah.
because you're right. They do a great job at that stuff, and you all do a great job at that. And being a really high-level comp plan document, it tends to be very general in nature. And then those smaller plans get adopted and sort of become a part of that standing on their own. But we could certainly, if you like that approach, we can certainly add that as a strategy here. Yeah, and I believe you phrased it as continue developing small area and neighborhood plans, is that?
Developing and implementing.
Yeah.
Oh, you got it? Okay, great.
It's just, those are our highlights when we have our meetings.
Yeah.
Because we never have negative discussions.
That's awesome though, right?
Yeah, that's why I think we
That's
should
great.
highlight it here.
Yeah, yeah.
And this
No.
probably falls into that, and I know my next statement's gonna sound extremely trivial compared to what this is really about, but, in the neighborhood that I live in, there's city-provided trash cans all along the streets, and they're always overfilled with just, it's gross. And, we talk about livability and that kind of stuff, and I don't know if it ratchets up to something in here, but cities' ability to support, those kinds of city services is, I don't know where it falls in here, if at all, but
But there is a connection there, right?
it feels like it.
Livability, the definition of that probably falls somewhere in there.
Yeah.
That falls somewhere in that definition.
Yeah, and I'm sure, I mean, it's an observation, I'm sure it does fit in here somewhere, I just,
Yeah, I think there, we talk about livability, it's not just the postage stamp of your house, it's the
Right.
street. There's a neighborhood
Yeah.
component. And there will be a community services and infrastructure chapter where we talk about things like trash service and other things. But it might be nice to draw that connection more explicitly if you all want to do that.
I mean, it's great to put a bunch of trash cans down, but then what? Like, so
You gotta
anyway.
come back and pick them up
Yeah.
and take care of them and all
Yeah.
that jazz. Yeah, but I mean, something along the lines of, ensure high-quality service delivery in neighborhoods, or,
Yeah, maybe, yeah.
something like that would,
Right, you can throw in bulk collection, litter, leaf, all
Right.
that falls somewhere.
It's got to fall somewhere.
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, especially-
Landscaping,
Yeah.
especially in terms of trash and refuse, right? Like, I mean, getting rid of that stuff. Yeah. Was your comment more about, like, garbage? Or was it about, no, I mean, or was it just about, like, the services and the things that the city
Well,
does?
I can paint a picture for you, and you can tell me what it's more about.
Okay.
But the picture for you is going down Madison Street off of Fifth Street or Federal, and you see these cobblestone streets, but we spend a ton of money and time, meticulously putting these nice cobblestones to make our streets continue their historic nature, but then you've got all these weeds growing up. I mean, it's trivial, I understand, but also if you drive through it every
But it
single
matters.
day,
Yeah.
it just beats you down a little
Yeah.
bit, and it's just an observation. And you got these beautiful trash cans that probably cost $3,000 a piece, but they're overflowed with refuse, and it's on the street, it's on the sidewalk, it's on the grass that I'm assuming that the city's responsible for, and it sits there for months and months and months.
Yeah. So it's,
Trash cans? People, you mean your individual trash cans?
No,
or
the city provided,
Public.
yeah, trash cans.
Yeah.
They did?
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Trash cans.
Yeah,
Okay,
like
got it. Yeah. Okay.
No, sorry, I'm not using the right words. I apologize.
Trash cans are trash.
They're not implementing their own
budget to take care
Right. That's yeah.
yeah, so I would say that's less specifically about trash and more about just the general services. and
Beautification, I'm sure it
provision.
fits in here
Yeah.
somewhere. Anyway,
Yeah.
I'm not trying to derail it.
No, it's a great
Well, if you
point. So,
provide public cans, guess who's going to start bringing their trash, so they don't have to pay the
That's
the
probably,
bags.
that's, I mean, I take all my recycling to that trash can. No.
They're going to overflow pretty quick.
any other questions on this
Just
objective?
a quick question.
Yes, sir.
What's magic about 1976?
I'm sorry,
If I built my
it is
mobile home in
76, I said
1980s.
78.
Oh,
So the
that's-
code change that regulates them at that point,
Okay.
that's what's different about it. Yeah.
Okay, but that's what state code,
Right.
this is a component that. State code requires that we address mobile homes in some fashion.
Yeah.
Lead paint or asbestos or something like
I think that's the
Yeah, yeah,
that's
and
the cutoff
framing
mentioned
that
in
it's built
the,
on and
yeah.
all that. Yeah, the safety, the fire.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of different.
Okay.
All right. Well, that, I think, is all of the strategies for housing. Is that correct? Okay, so the next thing we'll look at are the catalyst strategies. We'll go bounce back to the presentation here. That's it, yeah. So the purpose of these are to have strategies that can, kind of light the fire, right? These are things that come out of the plan, out of those strategies that you read before, but which have the ability to make change quick. So if you adopt the plan, then you can go to this short list of things to get it moving quickly, right? That's the idea behind this. And basically what we're asking you all is, do you agree that these are good catalyst projects for that effect? So again, they come from the ones you saw before, but amend the zoning ordinance to ensure all residential dwelling types are permitted appropriately. That means you all would look at the zoning ordinance and decide that those uses are in the districts that you think they should be in. Right? Is that a fair? Okay. Number 2, support the ongoing efforts of the Housing Collaborative, engaging health and education institutions to join it. Number 3, develop a functional housing trust fund, which we talked about, within 5 years using similar communities. adopt a drug and blight ordinance in accordance with the Code of Virginia to address blight associated with illegal drug use or other confirmed criminal activity. So that's one of those enabling legislation things. If you adopt that, then you have more ability to deal with certain properties that are affected by drugs and crime. All right?
Are there the examples, talking about the code section there?
Sorry?
15907, is that, are you talking about the blight ordinance? Are you
Yes.
there yet?
Yeah, I mean, they're similar. They work in similar
Just,
ways.
do we have examples of that in Virginia that the
Yeah.
city might be able to follow?
Yeah,
that
a
work?
good example, a different community that I was in the other day, down towards Martinsville.
I asked because I assume that's where that comes from, is that there's examples, so go ahead.
Yeah,
Sorry,
yeah. So like, what they had was, there was a set of houses that were in very poor condition. They could not get the owner to fix them up. They couldn't they couldn't get it dealt with that way. But because crime was occurring there, and because there was drug use, having that ordinance allowed them to condemn the property and to deal with it that way, and to clean it up and turn it into something else.
Yeah, that's what I was,
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah. And that's in a general sense. Number 5, develop a blight abatement plan to specifically identify solutions for deteriorating properties in designated historic districts. So that would sort of tie some of that stuff together in terms of the historic district. So we felt like these are ones that would be relatively easy to implement and could get you moving quickly in the right direction.
My question would be just more about a general framework for how you would prioritize these, but they seem to make sense.
I mean, if I was gonna do it personally, and they're not in any particular order. If I was gonna do it personally, I think, amending the zoning ordinance, looking at the housing types and where is a relatively attainable thing to do. So, being a little easier, I might put that one first. And then I would say adopting the drug blight ordinance and the engaging the collaborative. The 2, 3, and 4 are sort of, there in the middle. Number 5 is developing a plan, so it's gonna take a little
Right.
more time,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So are these, if these are adopted, are they attached to the chapter, or are they just tools that are provided to city staff separate from what we're looking at in the
Are we going
chapters?
to incorporate them in the chapter?
Well,
Catherine?
These are already strategies.
Yeah.
These are strategies that we've looked at previously. We're saying of all the strategies, so the 20-plus strategies that we looked at, these are the 5 that
But
rise
where
to
does
the
this end
top.
up? What's our point in doing this? Who gets this?
It's part of the chapter.
And you,
So- Yeah.
yeah, it's
But-
part of the chapter, but it's basically a list of suggestions. This is.
But we're not seeing that now.
Sorry?
We're not seeing this now anywhere in the chapter.
That's correct. It's not part
So-
of the chapter, but all these strategies are in the chapter.
We cover these in some of the objectives too, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, these are-
These are the
Question about-
same.
Yeah, they were
ones
in
you
the
saw.
objective.
You
This-
think they're represented in the chapter, in various forms?
So
Yeah.
I'm gonna go back to this.
Thank you.
This is the outline of the plan. So the 5 catalyst projects we just looked at are strategies in the housing chapter. And what we've said is that these rise to the top as catalyst projects. So chapter 2, which is not yet drafted, will have a section that says these are the catalyst projects for the entire plan. These are the things that are gonna light the
Yeah, yeah,
fire.
Yes, otherwise there's no.
Yeah, no, they're not here just for a discussion for
Yes.
us. They will be actual written part of the
Gotcha.
plan.
All right, thank you.
All right. So that's really it for housing and neighborhoods. Any final thoughts on that before we move on to economic development? Okay. So, do we have a chapter goal for?
There are 4 chapter goals.
All right, yeah, thank you. So there are 4 chapter goals here in economic development. We have goal 1 is broken out a little differently. Position Lynchburg as a top choice for entrepreneurship. career development, and higher education. Goal 2, promote Lynchburg as a thriving business hub, emphasizing investment readiness, proactive support, and economic growth. Goal 3, enhance Lynchburg's destination appeal and increase the impact of sports and recreational events. And Goal 4, market Lynchburg as a leading city in Virginia for quality of life, innovation, and community spirit. And I'll pause for you to think about those for a moment. Any questions?
I think that goal 3, just real quick anecdotally, is a really interesting one. My memory doesn't serve me here, but do we emphasize that, or has that been emphasized in previous conversations? I know Margette is about to present something to City Council.
So we did work very closely with her office on this chapter in particular. That's why it is structured just a touch differently than the others. And it is sort of based and builds upon their blueprint for opportunity, which is kind of their strategic guiding document, similar to what we have in our comp plan.
Yeah.
So if you're asking, that's in line with what she is recommending, then yes.
Yeah. I mean, there's a big push by the Economic Development Department to enhance Lynchburg's destination appeal, that is tourism,
I just can't wait to see how that pans out.
and the impact of sports and recreational events.
So,
Yes, sir.
That's because of the World Disc Golf
Championships, we saw it.
Well, if I'm being
I know.
completely honest, it feels like the city has been a lot of talk about sports and recreation.
yeah, I was just going to say that I feel like this topic came up like 10 years ago, and out of that, you know, the state games came up, and this,
games?
yeah, and it's like chasing this pot of gold that never really appears, and everybody else is doing it too.
Yeah.
Just at my
I'm supportive of it. I'm just surprised to see it here.
I like goal 1 and goal 2.
Yeah, and there are 2 parts of that goal 3. There's the destination appeal part, right? And then there's the sports and recreational events part. And to me, those are a little bit different, right? The first one, destination appeal, is really about tourism. It's about guests. It's about, you know, people coming with their wife or whatever on the weekend to stay downtown and do stuff and, you know, things like that. And you're also the center of the region, you know, so people come into it to do things. I mean, I used to bring my little daughter when she was a kid down here to the Children's Museum, right? And we would, you know, go and have a great time and all that in the ball pit. And I mean, those are the kinds of destination appeal things. And when people come to your community as a guest like that, they spend a lot more per capita than people who live here do.
So I think the idea of heads and beds makes a ton of sense.
Yeah.
We've got 5 local colleges, universities.
Right.
We are not just a regional, but frankly, an East Coast hub. Pittsburgh, Virginia Beach, Atlanta, they're all going to only travel 8 hours in order to come to a place like this.
Sure.
Those big national teams are not going to go from Atlanta to Virginia Beach, but they come to somewhere like Lynchburg. But where I get a little surprised, if I'm being honest, is infrastructurally speaking, considering our relationship with Liberty and the benefits or lack thereof that we have there, I'm just really curious as it pans out, and I'll learn more in October, of what our investment in becoming a destination will look like.
Yeah.
Because we have disparate recreational facilities, but not all are, well, frankly, I don't think any are really leveraged to be that.
Yeah, and there's a certain level of service that you have to provide to play in that, you know, and there really is.
Yeah, so,
Yes, sir.
and I'm sorry, I don't want to harp on the same goal. I'm just kind of curious,
No,
so
that's
that
all right.
with sports and recreational events, are we going to see some ideas about developing facilities, or are we focusing on, for example, you know, Liberty plays East Carolina and you have 10,000 people,
Right.
they're going to spend a lot of money.
Yeah.
Are we focusing more on people are coming here
Right.
for things existing, or are we thinking about part of a plan that will say we're going to build a softball complex or a baseball
Multi-sport
complex?
complex.
Yeah, that's, I guess one of my questions, is that something that we're going to see more of, something like that?
Rachel, tell us
Yeah.
what you're planning.
Also, I don't think we have a specific strategy listing out, build a
No, we
stadium,
don't.
right? Like, that's not what it's about. I think it is more about partnerships, and I'd be happy to follow up with Margette, and, you know, if you're looking for more concrete ways that's gonna happen, if you're not,
It's more out of interest than anything.
okay.
Yeah.
I think this is mostly not about not losing the Commonwealth Games, even though we've lost the Commonwealth Games.
Well, maybe
Yeah.
we have an informal volunteer committee. We actually committed to coming up with ideas to address that,
Yeah.
in the community. How can we do this? Here's what our resources are. How can we leverage these and develop these into X down the road? Because otherwise, we're not going to incorporate them. It's just another point in the comprehensive plan.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good point. But Tom, to answer your question, in my opinion, you kind of need both. I mean, you need to work to it on that level of, cooperating with partners and making sure that, the things that schools do or whoever else it is good for the city and vice versa. You need to make sure that you've got the hotel rooms to be able to capture those people so that they're staying here, in the restaurants so that they're eating here, all of that kind of thing. But then that other kind of leg of it, if you want to try and attract those events yourself, you have to have the facilities for it.
It's kind of chicken and egg stuff.
True,
You
yeah.
can't develop hotels and restaurants if you don't have the audience. And you can't develop the approaches if you don't have the means of.
That's right. Yeah.
housing.
Yeah, so they're kind of interdependent. So rather than an or, I think of it as an and, really. Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
the disc golf championship that just hosted last month kind of speaks to that, having that partnership with Bedford.
Right.
We don't have the landmass that the counties have, but,
And CVU did partner with Central Virginia United Soccer Organization, did partner with the City of Lynchburg and with the UFFL, which is the National Flag Football League, to bring in one of their regional tournaments, but it was in Campbell County, but through a partnership with Lynchburg City.
Mhm.
So.
Yeah, and I mean, when you do those kinds of things at a regional level, you often have, certain types of people that are traveling with the team will stay in this kind of hotel in that region, but the parents there may be looking for, a Hampton Inn kind of thing, and that's in this community, and the event is here, and maybe you hold a welcome to town event in, those kinds of things. So it really does pay to work together like that. Yeah. Yeah. All right, well, let's dive in and into the goals and look at the strategies a little bit that are associated with each one. So, you might have to imbigonate that a little bit for us. Thank you. Can everybody see that okay? Can you guys see it? All right. Okay, so we've got here on the left, goal statement, right? And then here are the objectives that are underneath that goal statement. The goal statements are the ones you just saw, right? And then the strategies over here. So these 4 strategies relate to this objective. This objective is enhance Lynchburg's profile as a top educational destination. This is the campus LYH strategy that economic development has come up with. And this is under the position Lynchburg is a top choice for entrepreneurship, career development, and higher education. Everybody follow? Okay. So, first strategy, use targeted marketing to showcase campus amenities and host events to attract and retain students, faculty, and staff. Regularly meet with education leaders to understand their needs and collaboratively develop strategies that enhance academic programs and student success. Strengthen efforts to create an inclusive environment within educational institutions through discussions with educational administrators. And encourage student participation in local community events and track progress to enhance community integration.
What's the third?
This one?
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Why is that in there? What does that mean?
Strengthen efforts to create an inclusive environment within educational institutions.
Do we not have that?
I think that the point of that one really is about making sure that there are options for everybody. If you're looking for a private school education, we have that. If you're looking for community college, we have that. If you're looking for Christian faith-based, we have that. It's kind of about it being sort of a big tent kind of look. And through discussions with the educational administrators, to kind of help them stay positioned so that they stay relevant and they stay successful in the marketplace for education. Other questions?
I have a thought that I'm not
Yeah.
sure fits into the strategies for that specific objective, but if you're going to position Lynchburg as a top educational destination, the people that might be visiting Lynchburg for the educational purposes, they need places to stay, they need places to
Yes.
eat. It probably does fall in here somewhere else that I'm jumping ahead or something, but maybe a strengthening of a relationship between am I making sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Between the retail and restaurants and the hotels with these objectives. I'm not sure exactly how to make that
Yeah,
work.
no, but it's a great point. Some of that is in the first one a little bit, targeted marketing, showcasing things, attracting, retaining students. So that may be about the downtown, it may be about the facilities that particular, college or
Yeah.
university has, et cetera, et cetera. But yes, that's a good point. I think we have a little bit more in the text if we slide on down.
Yeah,
Hold on,
okay.
yeah.
I'm sure
let's
you
make
did, yeah.
Well, let's make sure that you're satisfied with it, whatever it is. Whenever you have a moment, Catherine, if you could slide us on down to the next objective, I'll try and make sure we see the rest of it. So this other objective, ensure that educational programs and training align with employer requirements. This is a little more focused on, really kind of helping the educational institutions produce the labor and the capital and the working knowledge inputs that they need, helping people get jobs with the degree that they have.
Can I ask a question about that?
Yes, of course.
Y'all from Blacksburg, right?
Sorry?
Blacksburg? Where's y'all's office?
We're actually diverse all over
Okay.
the state.
There were some there in Blacksburg, I think, last time I was here, maybe. One of the things that I look at Lynchburg as lacking is a connection, and of course, there's a lot of tension between Tech and Blacksburg, JMU and Harrisonburg, but I feel like the college system seems to integrate with the community in the way of economic development. And I wonder if that would be something that we could strive more towards in this plan, that we work on developing stronger partnerships, because I don't feel like we have as strong of a partnership as a community as most places with colleges. I think that we're missing the boat in that way.
Yeah.
Like if we benchmark ourselves against other communities with like institutions, I think we'd see significant differences in the way they interact versus the way we interact here. Some of it might be institutional cultures, but I really think it would be important to try to work on changing that and improving that.
Yeah, no, thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, but I mean, I want to think about places with big colleges and not huge
Yeah.
cities.
Yeah, they
And there's a
have
lot
one
of-
big university
Yeah.
and that dominates
Yeah.
the town, or city.
Right.
Yeah, and that makes it a little
I think
easier.
Harrisonburg would be a better example, a much bigger city. There seems to be a lot more tie with economic development, and I think that's something that really needs to be fleshed out here more. I don't think the plan, it addresses what a normal
Yeah.
community would be like, but I think that's something we really lack here.
Yeah, and it is, I think, easier, as you, I think, were alluding to, when there's just one, right? There's Virginia Tech, and it just dominates everything. You guys have a variety of institutions, which is really good. But it's a little more, you got to kind of go to everybody to do it. There's more partners at the table.
And I think there's more tension. I think there's
There
more
is.
tensions. I
There's
think
more
that that's
potential.
something as a community we need to work on,
Yeah.
because I think that there's a lot that each college wants to do, but really things happen when there's partnerships on those.
Absolutely. And the colleges have land, so you can work with them to locate things and to make deals, stuff like that. You can work with them to co-recruit businesses that the city and the students or the college want to see, whether that's some kind of a Chick-fil-A that's right there off of campus, right? or if it's some kind of strategic partnership. And furthermore, you also really want to work tightly with them in industry, right? So you can create this jobs pipeline between one and the other. so that there's feedback back and forth too. But no, you're absolutely right, Tom. We can add some language to that effect, yeah. Dave, did you have something you wanted to add?
I think, yeah, you're addressing some of this. And I think all of this is very important, but I think we do need to make it clear that it's really the alumni. I mean, students come here because of the school, not because of the locality. They're going to go to LU wherever it is. It's the alumni that we want to keep here.
Yeah,
And they're going to stay because of what's here.
yeah, yeah.
We all know tons of LU alum. And I think we need to make it, that emphasis more clear, in my mind. I mean, we can do everything we want to increase high school interest in Lynchburg. It doesn't matter.
Yeah,
They're going to go because of
Yeah.
the school.
yeah.
But it's that, once they're here, if we're providing the connections with the city through internships, through collaborations, and then great job transitions, and keeping those alumni here, I think that's what's going to really pay off.
Yeah, and having that relationship with those businesses so that they're involved through the city to the school, right?
Yeah.
And they're making sure that they get the training and the degree or
Right.
whatever it is that they need to have, and then come out of it, hey, here's a job
Right.
and it's right here.
Yeah, so I'm not saying that to diminish what's here. I think just
Yeah.
building up more.
Yeah,
How do
a
we,
little more
how do we
emphasis on that.
how do we retain alumni?
Yeah, yeah. And the housing is part of that too, right? You're gonna have the housing product for them.
Yeah.
Okay.
So are we gonna go back and revisit that, the housing, so was it, like, I think 8/10 of the first chapter 3 we didn't hit on. Are we gonna go back and discuss that? Because we went right on to development and tourism.
Yeah, we got through all of we're really just gonna go through the goal statements, the objectives, and the strategies. If there's specific parts of the chapter that you'd like to discuss, we can, I mean, in a philosophical sense, we can go back and do that. If there's specific little things, like something could be worded differently, or, I'm not sure exactly what this is, or something like that, probably use the comment tracker for that. Was there sort of like a substantive thing you wanted to discuss there, or?
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
probably a few, but we
Okay.
can continue going on where we are now. I just wondered if we were gonna go back.
All right, well, let me finish this, and then
Yeah.
if you'd like, we can take a look at that. So the strategies that relate to this objective support the existing regional workforce roadmap by partnering with the Lynchburg Regional Business Alliance and Regional Workforce System to collaborate on creating, supporting, strengthening new existing career pathways for high-demand jobs in our city and region. That's kind of that jobs pipeline stuff that I talked about. Support industry-specific advisory councils, partnerships with local businesses and educational institutions for curriculum design, implement regular updates to training programs based on industry feedback. It's about having that dialogue, I think you mentioned. Support internship and apprenticeship programs to provide hands-on experience in entrepreneurship through initiatives like the Co-Stars program. Partner with local businesses, educational institutions, and organizations such as the Small Business Development Center, Lynchburg Region, Vector Space to offer structured cohort-based training. Any questions on those? I feel like we probably covered most of that in the previous discussion. All right, we'll slide on to the next one whenever you have the chance, Cal. Thank you. Okay, so the goal statement here was that second one, promote Lynchburg as a thriving business hub, emphasizing investment readiness, proactive support, and economic growth. And then I'm going to take a little bit different approach here. I'm going to kind of go, because some of these objectives don't have a whole lot of strategies. I'll kind of go from one to the other. The first objective is enhanced site readiness. And what that means is that you have sites for development that are ready to go. They've got the utilities, they're correctly zoned, all of that kind of thing, right? There's a whole certification process you can go through if you want that explains that for those. And I know the city does that in industrial parks and that sort of thing. So enhance site readiness, invest in utilities and infrastructure access at publicly owned sites to reduce barriers for business prospects. So that is, make it easier, make it more ready to go. They know that it's going to work. Businesses want certainty. Objective 2, gather insights on local business needs challenges, and opportunities, and use this data to inform city policies and economic development strategies. So what you're doing there is you're having that dialogue with the businesses. So you know what the business conditions are like, you know what their needs are, and it acts as an early warning system too, so that if somebody's having trouble, you hear about it. Gather insights on local business needs, challenges, and opportunities by regularly conducting a comprehensive business survey of employers located in the city of Lynchburg. Maintain a local business inventory and track employment and investments to tailor resources and support programs. Support programs, events, and projects through the James River Arts and Cultural District Program. Yes, sir.
That's a good one. Support program, I feel like there needs to be some emphasis on, they support programs,
Yeah.
not very well. So, I don't know how you put more emphasis on support.
Well, are there specific ones you think that they should support better or differently?
Well, I mean, it's hard because like there's there's initiatives that come out of, organizations like DLA, Downtown Lynchburg Association, which they do get a lot of attention from the city, and rightfully so. And then there's people like me who do things like Oktoberfest, where I feel like I'm just opening up my wallet to the city and be like, you tell me, why do I have to pay 15 police officers to be a part of this? It's a trivial again, but I just feel like back to some points made earlier about some verbiage here. Support is one thing, but incentivize might be, I'm not exactly sure, but.
Well, I
Or
mean,
increase, like
yeah.
seek more, I don't know.
Seek additional partnerships
seek
such
additional
as?
Well, because, I'm coming from the private sector
Right.
point of view, and I will tell you, it doesn't, first off, the people that work for the city that support me, thank you very much. I do appreciate it. I really do. And they've made things easier. It's just that from a financial perspective, it doesn't look easier on paper. Let me put it that way. So, I don't know if that's a helpful comment, but just something that jumped out.
Would something like, better support partnerships with
Or seek-
local?
It almost feels like a fund or something, to support private or, I'm not exactly sure what the right language is, but.
Well,
Support-
Dave, look at the one
support
right
and
above it.
invest in.
The one right above it does mention private businesses.
Yeah.
So, I'm not saying they're doing it,
Right.
but at least it's being addressed a little bit in the bullet right above the one
It
you
is, and
mentioned.
again,
And the-
DLA is doing a great job of business inventory.
And the one below it,
Yeah.
support programs.
I'm just
events.
saying, if you've got people, if I'm being honest, I put on an Oktoberfest for the city, and I asked for city support, I asked for city council support, meaning like literally show up. It's a cultural event, and there's some significance beyond just having a party. We asked high schools to participate, local bands to participate, like high school bands to
Marching
participate.
bands.
Yeah, anyway, the city was basically like, man, you're asking us to do this, really? It's like, come on, man.
Working with another community, and you see the same thing, it almost seems like when you have economic development and tourism type things together, they, for some reason, don't seem to mesh.
Yeah.
Like they have conflicts.
Yeah, that- yeah.
There's a conflict there, and so, sometimes when I read this, some of it's problematic because I feel like it's tourism driven, and economic development's totally different.
Yeah.
And if it's going to be about tourism, the purse strings would be more open.
Right.
Right. I think that's one of the issues. It is a combined. It's the way that our city is set up, but
Yeah.
I do think it poses some structural issues.
Dave, in your situation, it sounds like you might need to partner with DLA or the James River Arts and Cultural District.
And I did get to take advantage of that grant, of that program, through a grant, but, now I'm just whining. It was just a bit painful, that's all I'm saying.
Yeah, well, but it needs to be easy, right? We all want to work together, we're all working for the same thing, so. Yeah, let's wordsmith and see if we can come up with
Sure.
something that's a little more.
Sure.
A little more a little more open there.
Yeah, and I guess another lens to put on this, and for you to consider and not to beat up here, is that creating friction for, at least for people like me, creating friction to want to create events like Oktoberfest, which I know I'm being very specific, but it's a burden. So when I say create friction, like, I don't know how many technical reviews I've got to go through and how many schematics I've got to provide, but I don't understand why I need the entire fire department on Jefferson Street for Oktoberfest.
Yeah.
Like that, and you spend $10,000 on city resources, and I love city resources, but they literally stood there all day long, and that is not a good use of their time or my money, or people's money.
Yeah, so it may kind of come down to how to better work together, really. Like,
Yeah.
just in a friendly way, removing those barriers and things like
Well,
that.
to say it another way, some risk acceptance
Yeah,
from the city's perspective.
yeah, thank you. Any others here? I guess I need to go on a little further here, don't I? Where do we stop? I think we stopped with strengthen relationships with local businesses, understand their needs, and provide tailored support to foster growth and a thriving economic environment. And then the strategy for that one is implement a business visitation plan to gather feedback on challenges and opportunities, and to provide customized support tailored to each business's circumstances. Regularly assess the effectiveness of the plan and adjust strategies as needed to continuously improve the business climate in Lynchburg. So that's that dialogue, and that would be an excellent topic for that.
Yeah,
Wouldn't it? Next, a goal here, attract and support businesses in Lynchburg through strategic use of the EDA and various incentives. Leverage the resources of the EDA to offer a range of incentives and credits to businesses considering relocation or expansion in Lynchburg, including targeted financial investments, tax credits, grants designed to reduce initial costs, and to promote sustainable growth. Yes, sir.
Just on that one,
Yep.
it feels to me that leveraging we have resources, and they do a pretty good job of marketing them, but those resources that are available through the EDA are sometimes extremely not attainable to a startup or a small business like the ones that I have. Because if you're asking, just as a quick note, I would, instead of leverage the resources, it might be something like evaluate. And I do think someone should evaluate it, because if we're trying to promote Lynchburg, you need to be able to incentivize small businesses to go to the EDA and want to leverage the EDA. If the EDA is going to ask for 100% collateral on a loan that they're willing to provide, well, that's not
hard. It's tough.
That's not.
Yeah.
It just doesn't incentivize. It
Yeah.
just, I mean, it frankly sets people up for failure.
Well, do we feel like, do we feel like maybe it would be good to have something like this for the things they're doing now, and then sort of another strategy that was maybe more making EDA funds or programs more accessible to smaller businesses?
I think they've got, first off, what do I really know? But I think they've got to, EDA should, or someone should evaluate what EDA's credentials are for providing those loans. Because if you're going to promote Lynchburg as a thriving business hub, well, you're going to have to take a risk. Don't tell me that you're going to incentivize, or that you've got resources that frankly aren't real resources. I go to any bank for that same loan.
Yeah. Well, especially when you're dealing with smaller things like that,
Yeah.
there's just more risk involved. And if you're going
Yeah.
to do that, you've got to acknowledge
100%.
that. Yeah. Other comments? All right. Can you slide us up to the next one? Just to close the loop on that, we will work on that strategy and see if we can.
Yeah, my basic point is have EDA evaluate
Yeah.
their credentials.
Yeah, well, you're right. I think it's a really excellent point.
Well, I think a good parallel is what's going on every year with Downtown Lynchburg Association, with the money they've been giving to the new businesses.
Yeah.
Or am I not getting the right picture of that?
Well, you are. I
Yeah.
think you are. And again,
Because that seems to be, take the money and do something good with it. And it just seems to be, I'm not looking at it from the outside, but it seems to be fewer hurdles to get that than if you're going through the city.
so they do reference, I think, the co-starters in here. So, you're bringing up a good point. I would just I've mentioned this to DLA, and it's a hard pill to swallow because, if they could say that they've given $50,000 to 5 different businesses, $10,000 a piece, and that jumpstarts them into their dream of owning a taco truck, then, or, whatever it might be, that's fine, but $10,000 also could be setting up people for a lifetime of failure. And I think the EDA, or the DLA's co-starter program is a great idea, but man, I'd rather see them give $100,000 to one great idea than $10,000 to 10 ideas. Especially if those people are gonna have to, again, put up collateral, probably using EDA, and then sign a lease, and then they've got a candle business, a standalone candle business that can't pay the debt. And anyway, there is some nuanced problems to all that, I think. I don't have any solutions for that. But
Yeah, but them thinking about it, I think, is your general.
yeah, my heightened
Yeah.
demeanor for the moment probably suggests that.
Reconsider that. So, let's see, not you, them, I mean, like, they need to reconsider it. Okay, so we've got a goal statement here: enhance Lynchburg's destination appeal, to increase the impact of sports and recreational events. So one we've all been waiting for, right? So, objective: showcase Lynchburg's unique assets, including the James River, local mountains, museum system, historic sites, to boost tourism and enhance the city's appeal as a travel destination. And then the strategy associated with that is to promote those things, essentially natural and cultural attractions, through targeted marketing campaigns, including digital advertising, social media, develop and distribute engaging visitor materials such as brochures, maps, and itineraries that highlight these assets. So you're going to promote it, basically. The next objective: enhance the overall experience for tourists. And then you have strategies supporting that one include continue investing in clear signage, including directional signs and information kiosks to help tourists navigate Lynchburg. Further develop customized itineraries for history, arts, outdoor adventures, culinary experiences available online at the the museum and the Visitors Center. Implement a sports tourism plan to align sports tourism objectives, enhance communication among stakeholders, and ensure the successful execution of our strategic initiatives, which I think gets back, I'm sorry, I'm not exactly sure who over here it was who was talking about it, but I think it was you, Dave, was talking about working with partners and stuff like that at a regional level for that. That's kind of where that comes in. And then position Lynchburg as an ideal location for conferences, meetings, bus tours by promoting the city's unique attractions and offer tailored support services to event organizers.
I think it would be unique to have something in there too, because I'll always talk about it, something to focus on our trails and a plan on continuing to develop those, because those bring a lot of people in. It's kind of crazy, but you'll run into people from all over the place and like coming to ride on the trail. And I think there's a lot of opportunity that's still out there for that. And it should be something, something that we note. There's a lot of everything, a lot of connection with those.
Yeah. Would you want to add trails to this?
Yes.
I think you should. And I think we should try to continue to build them out and grow them. I think it takes a committee or something, but I think it should be a strategy in our plan that this should be a really important part. We're so far behind at this point, what most cities are doing, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
We were ahead 10 years ago, but a lot of communities put this into their plan, and now they're much better interconnected.
Well, Marquette Upshur agrees with you on no, just based on our head nodding last big discussion we had. And Roanoke had a similar problem about 10 or 12 years ago. They didn't want any mountain bikers around there. And I'm a mountain biker. I do it regularly, several times a week. And I run into people all the time who are coming in from out of the area. People drive vans and travel the country to do this. Roanoke changed their philosophy and embraced the mountain bike culture, and they have a thriving community and bike shops there.
Yes.
People come from all over, and I can tell you their rides are very good, and they're adding new trails up there. They are epic. And we have some good rides around here. Peavine, Falling Creek, Liberty's got about 60 miles of trails. They can connect to the Appalachian Trail, whatever you call Appalachian. And there is potential to do that. But again, I have a similar feeling to maybe some of the earlier discussions, is that a lot of times these things end up in every comprehensive plan. We want to maximize our geography, maximize our tourism, maximize our sports, and in the end, like what happened to the Bateau Festival, for example? I mean, do we even still have that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
It's
just
just
a
That
big
would be
deal.
a big deal.
I mean, it is for that community.
Yeah.
For sure. But, so when I look at this, a large portion of this, if not all of it, except for the implement a sports tourism plan, to me, it screams marketing and promotions. Like, it screams advertising. And I guess back to, the points made earlier, yes, we should advertise these great cultural attractions and resources we have, but what is our investment in growing and facilitating these components to further enhance Lynchburg's destination appeal? It's not just about marketing them, but what are we doing to invest in them so that they grow?
Yeah, no, it's a great point. And you'll see some of that in other chapters. I mean, like you'll see more about things like trails in transportation and in parks and some of those other areas. I think it would be fair to add it here if you wanted. One of the things that you talked about Roanoke, one of the things that really helped Roanoke was the Regional Greenway Commission. And that and the involvement of staff and everything and looking at on that helped kind of create that synergy. So yeah, I mean, we could certainly look at adding a strategy, related to specifically those kinds of like outdoor and trails and planning and increasing that network from a tourism standpoint.
And to beat a dead horse, I get a little bit tired talking about how great our river is when we don't actually have much access to it. Mm-hmm. But if you were to tell me Lynchburg, the city of Lynchburg is going to invest on the Amherst County side in a partnership to better enhance our accessibility for not just Amherst, but our community, and I understand there's all sorts of stuff associated with that, but that would make sense to me.
We have some relationships in Amherst.
We do have some, yeah.
But we have, the plan is to have river access on the Lynchburg side, to move.
I can't, yeah. No, I love that.
Yes.
Back to the
Yes.
tracks.
Yeah, that's the plan, but
Yeah.
it's not gonna happen.
It never has.
Yeah.
It won't have discussion.
Long time.
No, it hasn't, it's not that old a plan, but it hadn't
Boat
happened yet.
ramp.
Right.
Things take
Yeah.
30 years,
Yeah, exactly.
and it might not happen in my lifetime, but it might happen in yours.
But I think the point is, in that first objective, we include, like, after local mountains, parks and trail systems.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
an explicit part of that objective.
Yeah, I think that's a great way
Especially
to
with
do
those
it.
2 new parks that we proposed.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Diamond Hill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we look at how that can actually implement it, like you said, in some of the other
Yeah.
parts.
Yeah.
Historic places too. We've got Poplar Forest.
Yeah, so, and that's a good point.
Yeah.
You mentioned regional, so there's been talk about trying to connect
Mhm.
Poplar Forest, so we could get to Lynchburg, and there really are some opportunities. There have been some changes in law around railroad right-of-ways
Right.
that could be utilized if we develop partnerships. I think we could develop a partnership with Amherst County. I think that would be relatively easy. It'd be interesting to see if we could really tap that with Bedford and Campbell. I think that should be included in there.
Yeah, no, that almost right there would be a great strategy in one of those other sections.
Mhm.
So, yeah,
So,
I think we got that
Okay.
down. Thank you. That's a really great idea. All right, just in the interest of time, let's move on. Yeah, I think we have one more goal, if I remember correctly.
How much time have we got?
Till 5.
So this goal is market Lynchburg as a leading city in Virginia for quality of life, innovation, and community spirit. Again, marketing focused.
Did we finish the other one? We didn't do the enhanced.
Oh, I'm sorry.
The experience for tourists above
I apologize.
objective.
I got ahead of myself.
Yeah.
My apologies, we sure didn't. Enhance the overall experience for tourists. Thank you.
We did.
Continue investing in clear signage. Maybe I'm just remembering it from before.
I think we covered that.
I think we did
Yeah.
that.
Oh,
Yeah, 'cause we
okay.
talked about the
So
bus
we-
tours.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah,
Sorry.
yeah, okay.
Is there another, another?
Neil, did you have another comment on it?
No, I was asleep, I guess.
So market Lynchburg is a leading city in Virginia for quality of life, innovation, and community spirit. Objective: align goals with Lynchburg's Downtown 2040 Master Plan to enhance the city's vibrancy, connectivity, and overall appeal, fostering a thriving urban environment. And strategies for that are work closely with stakeholders and other city departments to ensure city projects and initiatives complement the downtown plan's vision. Focus on improving infrastructure, enhancing spaces, and promoting mixed-use development that supports local business and attractions. That basically means make sure that everything that happens downtown works towards it rather than against it. It's just kind of all aligned. It's an important strategy. Coordinate marketing and community engagement efforts to highlight the benefits of the plan improvements and to strengthen the city's role as a vibrant downtown destination. So kind of hype the plan and make sure people know about it. And strengthen that role as that downtown destination. You're the downtown for the region, right? Any questions on those strategies?
Love those.
Okay, great. Position the Lynchburg Museum and Visitor Services as the premier source of information for the city. Enhance the museum's exhibits and programming to showcase local heritage, creativity, integrate interactive displays, visitor engagement activities, attract and educate tourists. Expand the selection and quality of permanent exhibits to incorporate cultural history of Lynchburg, as well as local government, education, and manufacturing histories. Execute a robust renovation of the Lynchburg Museum Visitor Services building to be an inviting space for visitors of all ages and abilities. Implement a strategic marketing and promotion plan for the museum and visitor services. Create an outdoor space that welcomes and encourages visitors. Refresh the indoor space to be visually and audibly appealing, including improved accessibility. It's related to the strategy 2 above it. Explore opportunities for collaboration and joint marketing and programming. Create more virtual and digital content for those who cannot visit the museums in person. Any comments on the Lynchburg Museum Visitor Services goal and strategies?
No. The Lynchburg
Feels like some people
Museum,
may have fought to put that one in.
Sorry?
Feels like some people may have fought to put that one in.
the Lynchburg Museum doesn't have any outdoor space, but they do have that church next door. That's the plan there, I think.
I think some of those are, you're gonna need to do that plan really to figure out exactly what those look like on the ground. I mean, there's obviously some engineering and architecture and stuff involved in a few of those. All right, we'll move on to the last one here then. Publicize Lynchburg's achievements in quality of life, innovation, and community by creating and distributing an annual report that highlights Lynchburg's achievements, innovations, community initiatives, and showcasing the city's quality of life and progress. So it's basically a marketing document. You know, but it's also an opportunity to toot your own horn. You guys are doing a lot of good stuff. Any other comments on these before we move on to the Catalyst projects? All right. So there are 2 Catalyst projects that were identified by, that we've identified here. Number 1, invest in utilities and infrastructure access at publicly owned sites to reduce barriers for business prospects. That's the one about site readiness. And if there's one thing that you can do to increase your attraction, that might be it. It's a very important strategy. Number 2, implement a sports tourism plan, which I think you remember that before, to align and support tourism objectives, enhance communication among stakeholders, ensure successful execution of all the other strategic initiatives. So you've really got 2 strategies here, one focused on the readiness of sites, developable land for business and industry attraction, and then you've got the sports marketing plan. Any other thoughts? Thumbs up, thumbs down?
I mean,
Yes, ma'am.
the sports tourism, I mean, the consensus is that would be the second most important, I mean, that can be done to increase economic development? Just, I don't,
I think it's probably to some degree in reaction to what is impending lost revenue from
From the lack of?
what will be taken from Lynchburg once the Commonwealth Games contract is out.
So-
You think it's all about the
An
Commonwealth Games?
extremely large amount of it, yeah.
So that one in particular, doing the plan will help you to coordinate all your efforts, to understand what you have and what you need to do for sports marketing, and how to use that to attract tourists into the community, you know?
Yeah,
So
and
there's
I
a lot of
understand.
things that come out of that.
yeah, I understand, but just the fact that it's like one of two things. That's
I
all.
think that's the reason for suggestion, is there, it includes a bunch of others.
Okay.
But are there others that you think would be?
No, I was just questioning. why-
It's all right.
Just for some context here, there are other nonprofit organizations like CVU, there's HOV volleyball, there's lacrosse, there's all these different sports entities that are all fighting for the same resources, and the city does not have a plan to support them, and it is a major component of beds and heads and that kind of stuff.
Essentially.
Yeah.
It impacts a lot of other things. I mean, we're open to others if there's something else you think is really important from strategies or.
And we will revisit these catalyst projects when
Right.
Chapter 2 is drafted. We'll be able to look at all of them together and refine, add, take away as needed.
I would like to see for the first one, something more involved with, like, identify publicly owned sites to invest. Because right now, I think most of us have no idea where we're talking about, what we're talking about.
I think the original strategy phrased it that way, didn't it? I swear it did. I swear it said, invest in.
In the chapter.
Yeah.
So maybe in the catalyst, include that language a little
It's the
bit.
first one.
Yeah.
Investing in utilities infrastructure at publicly owned sites.
But we still don't know what that means. Identify those sites.
Yeah.
Where in the city are we talking?
Yeah. I bet you Margette knows where they are.
That's probably.
Great,
Maybe
but-
those are
Right.
business
Yeah.
parks, the city.
Yeah.
Like,
Yes.
what's the place on
I mean-
Mill?
Yeah.
Bedford County, I think New London.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't have anything to do with it, but they've made it clear, we want New London to be where you bring your business. City of Lynchburg, I have no idea where that is.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if we added like, you know, something along the lines of identify.
Sure, no, it's very
publicly
easy,
owned
it's
site.
very easy to incorporate that. I'm just saying, make it more explicit. Let's identify
yeah.
those publicly owned sites that we can then do what we're
Do
talking.
that with.
Yes.
Great. Yeah, we can do that.
And that helps us as a planning commission, when those areas come up, we can say, yeah, this is one of those sites that we've identified as
Yes.
where we
Yeah.
want to go.
Yeah, almost a future land use kind of thing.
Mhm, yes.
Yeah. Thank you. It's a great point.
So rather than just saying
Yes, sir.
that, is there a way we can include data that shows the value in that? Because I've actually talked to multiple people who are decision makers about this stuff, and they're like, it's not worth it. And I teach business, and I work in another county too, and, you know, there's a lot of communities that are doing this. There's got to be a reason why they're doing it.
Yeah.
But the argument I often hear is, it's not going to do anything. It doesn't help. So it'd be nice to actually incorporate some benchmarking highlights on that, the value of having site-ready spots.
I have that. We can include.
Yeah, that would be.
I'd probably suggest a call out, which, you know, we like to do in chapters, you know, sort of a box on the side.
Yeah.
You're not really seeing this in layout yet, right? Like, it'll be much, you know, more fancy when it gets to that point.
Yeah, I think-
But for example, there's a blurb that we've been working on site readiness. And it talks about, you know, what the different levels are and the certification of that, the listing in the state databases and all that kind of jazz that, you know, then when a business is looking for a property, they go, okay, you know, this one on, you know, 42nd Street, this is tier whatever, and I know exactly what that means and what I'm getting into, you know. So yes, we can definitely do that.
So maybe Dave could speak to this a little better. Part of what I see in that is if you build it, they will come. If you go to Winders, we have two more or less planned unit type developments in Lynchburg, Cornerstone and Windhurst. And Cornerstone seems to be a little more housing intensive, a lot of rentals, a lot of students in there. I remember when Mark Burrell and a couple others developed Windhurst, we were one of the first companies in there to actually list some of those townhouses for sale. It took a long time for those houses to sell.
Sure.
A long time. And if you drive through there now, I used to have an office over there. Office space is easy to come by because a lot of the commercial's empty because they didn't think about it beforehand. Windhurst is not a destination. It's a travel through to connect from Timberlake, Ford Avenue over to Forest and back and forth. It's a throughfare. It's not they imagined it as a destination, but it's not. There's a few interesting places in there. And when you develop, along the lines of what Dave here was saying, if you just identify buildings that may have potential to be occupied by businesses without identifying if there's a market for that, you're wasting time and money and resources. You know,
Yes.
Is it there? You know, is what we're looking to do with this approach there?
Yeah,
I mean-
and I think you're absolutely right. You have to have done the market analysis to know if it's there before you do anything. But in terms of site readiness, you're mostly talking about making sure that the utilities are to the site, that the site is properly zoned, that you have access to the site. It doesn't get into things like shell buildings and large investments and stuff that way. So it isn't as much if you build it, they'll come, as you're creating the conditions, you're providing what needs to be supplied for someone to come. Yeah. But you're absolutely right about it, doing the market analysis to know if there's a demand for it. You can't just do this and pray it's going to work out. Yeah. Any other comments on this before we move on? I did want to give just a few minutes to go back to whatever's in.
I think what I have to say is going to take more than a few moments, so we may not have time. I think my chief point on that was housing in neighborhoods is one of the primary challenges facing the city, and we went kind of from page 1 to page 31 and didn't go back and touch on any of the details, and
Yeah.
we probably won't have time to do that today, but I think it absolutely does need to be discussed, because there's some serious and important points of both philosophy and approach in there that deserve to be talked about.
Well, if you have some, I mean, we do have, at least a few minutes here. I think we were set to go till 5, I believe. Is that right?
Yeah, I don't want to cut
Yeah.
short your presentation on this either.
Well, we're
Might as well
almost
finish what we're
almost
finishing.
done, actually. We have
We're
like,
at the end, we just want to
Yeah.
cover next steps. So if there's an important point you would like to discuss about housing in the last 15 minutes, we can certainly entertain
yeah.
that.
You want to start now, or?
Starting now.
Yes, sir.
Question, Pat, same thing, like, there was a zoning page.
Uh-huh.
So
What
is that
page?
something that we're gonna be working on?
What page is it, if you don't?
It's, it's,
And we'll pull it up here.
yeah, the chart.
Page 7 or 8, well, the number on this page is page 21, but it's 7 or 8 on the file.
Yeah, so there, right there.
Yep.
Right, so will we be tweaking zoning through this planning process?
So in the comprehensive plan, no. The comprehensive plan is general in nature, and tweaking the zoning ordinance, if you're going to do that, is an outcome that you would do later after the comprehensive plan. But you may want to set guidance here, and you will be getting into things like future land use that will guide rezoning and zoning ordinance and stuff like that later on. I mean, Rachel, do you have a specific, idea in mind or format you want to go through all that with?
No, so I'll give an example of what we might talk about. The recommendation in here is to kind of evaluate and amend as necessary zoning districts. I think particularly when we're talking about housing, right? It's in the housing chapter, that makes sense. One of the things that we heard through public input, and one of the things that we've kind of even been talking about internally, just something that we've identified, is that our residential zoning is very, it kind of goes 0 to 100. So RC, R1, R2, those are all well, R2 and we don't have a lot of development in RC, so kind of the resource conservation, let's just set that aside. R1 and R2 essentially is just single family. One's a little smaller than the other. R3, you get into duplexes and really nothing else. Anything beyond that is high density, right? So where is, is there a way that we could tweak that to kind of get more of that middle housing product that a lot of people are looking for, seniors are looking for, young families are looking for? One thing that the Diamond Hill Plan mentions, and it was also mentioned in the Deerington Plan, is that row homes are something that could fill a very important need in our community, in our kind of housing spectrum of housing products that we have. But right now, our townhouse ordinance in the zone, it's kind of a standalone ordinance in our zoning ordinance, requires that we don't really allow a row house, actually. We only allow townhomes. A row house is supposed to be, a little bit of a smaller footprint, supposed to kind of fit into a lot of neighborhoods, maybe on the core or the corner where it's a little bit higher traffic. But, instead we've kind of got ourselves designed and regulated into only building 2+ acre townhome developments, which are sort of suburban in nature. They don't interact with the street. They've got bigger setbacks. So that's one example of how we might adjust the zoning ordinance to allow more different types of housing. Because I think somebody during the one of the public workshops, or is that what we called them, input sessions, said you almost need like a R3.5. Because R3 is just single family or duplex, and then R4 you're looking at. If you have R4, you're more than likely doing apartments because that's the most bang for your buck, and that's 20+ units an acre. So how do you get something in between? Right now we're kind of regulated into not facilitating that.
Yeah. And this is not unique to Lynchburg. I mean, there's a phrase, missing middle housing, because you kind of have the stuff on the big end and you have the stuff on the small end, and you don't have a lot in the middle. And that's common. But those are things that so like we talked about, one of the strategies was, evaluate the zoning districts to make sure you have the correct uses in those districts, or the appropriate uses, something like that. So after plan adoption, then you guys would begin a different process to evaluate that.
And I will add that the land use chapter, which is the final chapter we'll be drafting, will delve in a little bit more into zoning, but a complete analysis of zoning is not what a comprehensive plan does. The last phase of our scope of work, our contract with you all, is actually a zoning map evaluation. So once the plan is drafted and adopted, we'll look at your map and find those areas where there are these mismatches or holes where we need to look at the zoning ordinance. Yeah.
Rachel, where do ADUs fit in this? Are they legal? Are they allowed now? Are they?
Yeah, so our zoning ordinance allows accessory dwelling units.
In all?
Yes, but so like in the low-density residential R1, it has to be owner occupancy on the property. So it's not like,
right.
If you're building a
Two
mother-in-law
rental
suite in your
units.
basement, or, something standalone, even outside, like an accessory dwelling, the owner still has to live there. You can't convert it and then move away and then rent out both
Right.
units, because then you're kind of getting away from the single household.
It's no longer accessory.
Right.
Yes, sir.
Just real quick, speak to zoning. I've got a graphic, it's a picture of the city of Lynchburg and the zoning overlays for almost the entire city. So that's what the zoning looks like. And this is what we're working with. We'll be looking at tweaking when we have these discussions later about how to use. And what we're ending up doing is taking all these little areas, and this is actually just the southern 2/3 part of the city, is trying to solve these housing problems by retweaking and retweaking and retweaking all these other little areas in there. This is what's been going on for the last century in the city of Lynchburg, except that if you kind of bop down a little bit, what you're going to notice is something kind of interesting. We can pull this up here. It's not letting me pull this up. Let's try it. There we go. Okay. This is the northern part of the city. You see a difference in that? Now, what's in the northern part of the city? Almost the entire thing is R1 and R2. That's the old money city section of Lynchburg. The ones that have been setting the policies for all this other stuff for the last century.
Was that recently annexed, though? I mean, that's not...
No,
is
this
that
is-
all annexed, like in the 70s or something?
No, part of it was up here, but a lot of this overlaps to Bedford County, just a part of it does. Most of this has been in the city for a while. So what I'm saying is, the opportunity, if you want to rezone, you want to talk about developing properties, you want to talk about housing opportunities, there's only one place to go, and it's a place nobody in city leadership is going to want to talk about going. Other than that, we're going to be doing exactly the same thing we've been doing for 100 years, and that's tweaking everybody else's, trying to fit more and more and more people into these places and create more and more and more traffic problems, police problems, water problems, utility delivery problems, city services problems, while this gigantic upper third of the city goes with nice tree-lined streets. And I'm not against tree lines. I love the fact that we have that. But for the last century, we've had this thought process that all these other things are great for the lower part of the city, but not for the northern part of the city. And it's the northern part of the city issuing these things for the southern part of the city. So at some point, we either need to say, you're a hypocrite, and start changing policies, or stop pretending and just keep doing what we've been doing the whole time. But let's just say it out loud, shall we?
Yeah, and I think there will be opportunities at the future land use stage and certainly after plan adoption as you move into zoning to discuss all these. I mean, you all will get to decide these kinds of things as, what you think is appropriate where. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
but I think we're focusing on the wrong
Go ahead.
currency. We need to be looking at the flume, and then making sure what you're pointing out is
Yeah.
matching up with that, and if it's not, then that's where we discuss
That's correct, yes.
why there are
Yes.
exceptions.
Yeah, you really want to start with future land use. Any other comments on housing? Any other questions, topics you want to get to? I know we've got just a
That's
couple
still-
more minutes. I could take one more before we.
There's actually a lot. We just don't have time to cover it.
Okay, all right. Well, we can come back to it. And like I say, we have the comment tracker. Please be sure and use that, fill it out, send those back to Rachel. She will send them to us for us to either get back with you or to incorporate.
Where is the comment tracker? Is it online or is it in Dropbox?
We have a,
So I thought, is it just a Dropbox? Or do you want to try something different?
I'm sorry, I've misspoken, haven't I? Yes.
So we can give, and we can have this conversation offline, but if, we can do an Excel spreadsheet for capturing all of their comments, or if you want to share the Dropbox or PDF review link to capture their comments.
Does council get these chunks like we're getting, or do they get the whole thing once it's been reviewed?
So no, it's in its draft form right now. We're not sending this to council at this time. It would,
So if I want to have a conversation with members on council about things we don't have time to discuss, when will they actually see these drafts?
well, I mean, so the draft is online. It's not that it's
Well, I mean,
not-
when will they be
not
reviewing
public.
it?
It would be it would be reviewed once planning commission
We-
makes a recommendation on the whole plan together.
I think
Because there are
on
important
the
things that do
component.
need to be discussed that we're just not going to have time to do. So, unless we can make time to do them.
I mean, we can.
I mean, the
we
comment
can look
board
at
is
the
not gonna be
schedule.
sufficient to do that.
Yep. I mean, it's a lot to do 2 chapters
It is.
in a meeting, but it's,
Well, and I was
it's a
gonna
lot to
say, like,
cover.
the stuff that you want to talk about and that I think we all think is interesting, and I think we also need to look at the business zoning, because I think there are some business zoning that actually has left buildings empty and they'll never be used unless that's changed. I think that's when this is done. That's what it sounds like you're saying. You're going to talk about land use, and then I think after that, we have to address, after your plan comes out, the changes. I don't think it sounds like it's not part of the comprehensive plan, really.
It's
Well,
more and more to
The
what we do
philosophy of
afterward.
how we solve the problem is, and that is incorporated in this draft. As you go through it, the philosophy of why we have the type of housing that we do, what causes brain drain and what doesn't cause the brain drain. What are we doing to keep businesses here, and how does housing factor into that? Those are part of this draft. And if we're not gonna address those, there are specifics in there. And if we're laying those out as our guiding principles, and we have serious disagreements with those things, they do need to be discussed, because maybe the disagreements are valid, maybe they're not. But if they're not addressed, then it may be that we're continuing the same problems that we've had, for the last several decades.
I didn't want to say, we want to provide time and opportunity to discuss the things that you all want to discuss. We want you to be comfortable with this and feel good about, when we're done with it, recommending it to the council. So let us strategize a little bit on our end about what the best way to do that might be and get back with you. Would that work?
That sounds good.
Okay. Catherine, or Rachel, is there anything else you guys want to? I think you have a couple slides, right?
Yeah, just covering next steps here. Our next meeting together will be November 11th. We'll cover the mobility and connectivity chapter, as well as the environmental and community health chapter. January 7th is infrastructure and community facilities, as well as growth and character, which is the first part, rather, of the land use chapter. And then because we skipped the July meeting, we are bumping out to March. So March 5th will be our last meeting, work session, where we're getting together to discuss chapters.
So we're not doing Wednesday next time?
No, it was
It's on a
shifted, I
Monday.
believe, there was a conflict, and it has been shifted.
So I've got different dates
Yeah.
on my
Is it different?
calendar. I don't have those, and November 11th doesn't
Oh, you're right,
affect me, but
it's 14th.
Yeah, I was
Yep.
gonna say, because that's Veterans Day, if that matters.
Okay.
I don't think the city's open. Okay,
There we go.
that's correct.
Move one at a time. The next meeting up.
Yeah, it's right on the next slide.
There we go.
So, you have a week to get comments back to Rachel, and we will figure out the best way for her to handle getting those comments from you. So comments back on housing and the economy chapters. And again, that's not the end-all be-all. It's not your last opportunity to comment. It's just kind of the cutoff for this first round of review on these drafts of the chapters. We're working on drafts of the other chapters that we'll be presenting on November 14th. And again, you will get those chapters in advance. So come prepared for questions, comments, and great discussion. That's all I've got.
Thank you all.
Great, thank
Thanks a
you
lot,
all.
guys. It's really great working with you.